indeed one of the most promising faces of Indian politics, and not just because he's a young Turk and not just because he's leading the opposition's charge in Rajasthan, a state that will be very decisive as far as elections 2019 is concerned. But Sachin Pilot is a political voice that people would like to sit up and take note of. Thanks very much for being with us on the show right here. I think it's only fair because GST is in the air and everybody seems to be voicing their opinion on GST. I talked to you about GST. It's a reform that was in the making for over 10 years, almost 10-15 years. Finally, it became a reality. This wasn't an ideal GST. But is the opposition to GST purely political?
Not at all. I think GST is a good idea. It's a very positive concept. It's going ahead with the times that people around the world are changing, which is fair. But I think the execution, the planning, the preparations for the GST is backbreaking. The fact that the people were expecting a GST to be much more simplified, and look at the changes they made post the announcement. You know, it's okay to have teething problems, but GST I think has made life miserable for the smallest of traders, for the small communities. And you know, today the government says more people are registering for businesses. It's because they've been forced to do it. What are the costs for that registration? What is the cost to the small shop owner, small trader? It's not just monetary cost. It's time, it's effort, it's redundancies, etc. And moreover, the different slabs that have been propagated, nowhere in the world have we seen so many slabs for the GST. So GST is a good concept. It should have been much more consensual. The opposition today, the GST, is not because the concept is flawed. I think it's the hurried nature in which GST was forced upon people, and the fact that they're trying to make political dividend out of a reform that was not their concept in the first place.
I agree with you. It was a marathon and everybody ran a small relay, and the BJP perhaps ran the last lap. I agree with you that you deserve as much credit as the BJP does. But talking to this point that your party president also makes, your former finance minister also makes, and now you making, that there should be fewer slabs. In a country like India, where the purchasing power parity really differs from one section of the society to another, is it even realistic to think you can have a 1 or a 2 slab GST?
You see, ultimately, idea is to simplify taxation. Why must you have that many slabs, and why must we have a 28% slab?
That's right.
The Congress party had propagated a top cap of 18%. This 28% has come out of the blue, and you'll be surprised that when elections to Gujarat were there, the Gujarat traders were given relief. You know, so the specific targeting and changing of the goalpost depending on your political needs is something that we feel is wrong, and people are realizing that. So I think India mein, you've got to be aware of the sensitivities of the people's purchasing power and income capacities, but you really can't then you know, jumble up the entire economy because you're not able to you know, segment our taxation slabs in a way that is palatable and that is much more easy to work with.
You know, Mr. Modi said, the Prime Minister says that milk and Mercedes can't be taxed at the same rate. So talking about the 28% slab, the outgoing Chief Economic Advisor also says that slab should go. But common understanding is if you reduce 28% from the really highly priced, the sin, the demerit goods, then you will put a cess. Isn't cess also going to distort GST in some way?
See,
how are you going to refute milk versus Mercedes?
It's a very underhanded argument because besides the GST, various state governments are still putting cess. Government of India is putting highway cess, education cess, Swachh Bharat cess, etc., etc. So it's basically attacking the middle classes. Forget the GST for a minute and let's talk about the fuel prices. There is no rationale why the global prices are dipping and why the common consumer in India has to pay much more than it did 4 years ago. There's no reason for that. It's poor management, it's the greed of the government. They should actually pass on the benefits, whether it's GST or low global oil prices. The benefit must accrue to the poorest of poor. The thinking in the BJP, I think, is that soon enough people will start talking about more emotive issues, more political issues, religious issues.
And will be distracted away from
and
the
this
GST.
will then be forgotten as a byline, you know, force the media not to cover the negativity on GST and demonetization.
You know, I'm going to just turn away from the GST. And, you know, there is this whole anti-Modi, anti-BJP bloc that's in the works. You know, you're in touch with like-minded parties. You've done an alliance in Karnataka with the JDS, who you fought tooth and nail with. What is the glue of this anti-Modi alliance? Is this only because it's anti-Modi, or is there an ideology that binds all of you together?
Please understand that parties are bigger than individuals.
Sure.
But this country is much bigger and greater than any political party. But when you see in this country, in India, systematic dismantling of institutions, attacking at the roots of things that took 60 years to create, gagging of the independence of so many of our globally renowned institutions, the spate of people resigning from the government offices, highly renowned individuals, because they don't feel the freedom that they want should be there to operate. Constitutional bodies, judicial bodies, institutional bodies undermined, overwhelmed by the presence of the political forces in Delhi, and the kind of atmosphere that's been created. If you go back 3 years ago, people blamed, the BJP blamed the Congress for the award wapsis, this cow vigilantism that happened, the intolerance debate happened,
True.
this lynching movement that happened all over India, this caste clashes, this anti-reservation, Bharat Bandh. I think what India is going through is a process where a government is trying to dictate almost everything in life. And whenever you ask them or make them accountable, like Mr. Rahul Gandhi does, they fall back on what did the Congress do for 60 years. They talk about the emergency. It's long gone, 40 years over. Let's talk about what's happening today. So there is today, like many BJP leaders say, an undeclared emergency, whether it's Yashwant Sinha, Shatrughan Sinha, Arun Shourie, X number of BJP leaders who built the BJP today are introspecting and finding themselves falling short of what people expected. In fact, going completely the opposite way, where the dictatorial mindset is taking center stage of the governance policies of the government of India.
You were right in saying that a party is always bigger than an individual, and the nation is even bigger than a party. We've had these sort of experiments with, allies coming together, but somehow political egos don't seem to coexist, and these experiments haven't been very successful. What gives you hope for this anti-Modi alliance for 2019? And I think I'm curious to understand what sort of a role is the Congress going to play?
I think we must stop calling it an anti-Modi alliance. I think there can be differences of ideology and opinion, but I would like to call it a pro-India alliance.
Okay.
We have our own interest politically. Every party is different because that's why we are different political parties. But for the larger good of this country, for us to have some semblance of equity, of stakeholdership, of the marginalized, of the people who are on the fringes to be able to become part of mainstream again, people must come together, and that's already in the making. Frankly, I don't know what contours or shape this alliance will take, but I can tell you definitely regional parties, national parties will come together, and the Congress will and should be the pivot that holds this together.
Do you think you can still be the pivot, because
Well,
you've considerably shrunk politically from...
Fair enough. You see, numbers are very important, but nationally, if any political party has the bandwidth to take on the BJP at a national level, it is the Congress party. Yes, regional parties are important, they play their own role, and we will all have to sacrifice some part of our political interest to be able to align nationally and come together. Mrs. Gandhi called a meeting a few months ago where 17 parties came together. You saw the swearing-in ceremony in Bengaluru. All parties came together. So I think slowly but steadily the alliance is getting formed, but more importantly, the people who held on to the BJP have finally decided and realized that the two faces of the BJP is coming to the fore, whether it's TDP, the Shiv Sena. I'm not sure about the Akali Dal yet.
But while I agree with most of what you said, that there is this narrative which is extremely polarized in the country, what India is also going through is this, they like this very decisive prime minister of sorts, it seems. At least, that's what the narrative also is. How are you going to how are you going to battle this amorphous alliance versus this Vikas Shaktivan
It's okay to be decisive if the decisions are good. You cannot like decisiveness if the decisions are going to take us back, are retrograde, are having a negative impact. So I don't think people of India are going to be that naive to not see through the negativity of some of the decisions that have happened in the last 4 years. And quite frankly, if you have a government that has clear majority, there's no pressure of alliance and coalition pressures, for example, like the UPA faced, the expectations were very high. I mean, the farm income was to be doubled, 2 crore people were supposed to be given jobs, inflation, corruption was supposed to be eradicated, black money was supposed to be brought back. People will ask the question, what happened to those promises?
Are people asking those questions?
Definitely they are. You may not air those questions, but if you go onto the field, like I travel quite a lot in my state, people are beginning to ask those questions. And I tell you, it's the fact that democracy is vibrant and alive in this country, that no matter who you are, you have to be answerable. If anyone believes that because they won a election or 2 elections are above the people of India and cannot be questioned anymore,
No, I
that
think
is
the
the
people
first
turn
sign of
around and teach
downfall.
you a lesson, and they've done that repeatedly in India's political
With
history.
interest.
Absolutely. But I want to ask you another question that a lot of people are now curious about. There was a Congress of 2014, and I'm now not talking about the Grand Alliance, I'm talking about you because I know you were in a decision-making capacity there. There was a Congress of 2014 where Mrs. Gandhi was leading it. There's a Congress of 2018 and going into 2019 where Mr. Gandhi leads it. How different are these two Congresses, and how different is going to be your economic ideology? Are you going to support something like Air India privatization? Are you going to support the sale of IDBI Bank? Are you going to do things like these, which are important? I mean, why should the government be in so many businesses that it has no business to be in?
I agree with you. You see, the Congress party has been transforming itself according to the needs, expectations, the environment around us. And any party which fails to transform itself with the changing times will fall by the wayside.
Sure.
It's been proven and history is witness to it. The Congress, in a good way, I think also has a lot of people who are either left of center, who are extremely liberal in economic policy making, and there are some who are absolutely clear about what they feel should be state owned or should have, you know, stakeholdership of the people. And we come up with a healthy debate each time these issues come up. For me personally, I believe government should not be in the business of doing things that have been doing, that they have been doing, but to sell off Air India in a way that is that does not derive the true value of the airline, which has happened. I mean, the sell-off has been a spectacular failure, is because it's not been managed properly. I don't want to look back and say, well, we couldn't do this and we did this and they did this, but moving forward, government should really be a strong creator of a positive ecosystem where regulations are implemented. People fear the government not because of its interference, but because of the unbiased way in government will act swiftly if you deviate from the law. Banks, institutions being run on whims and fancies, due diligence not being done, people not being made accountable. I don't agree with all of those. But the government must open up, and it must not open up with tokenism. It must open up because the people of India must get the true benefit of the economy opening itself up. And Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister for 10 years, and we had a very good track record of our GDP growth. But more importantly, in '91, when the economy first opened up, it was the Congress government that opened the door for India's entry into the 21st century.
That's precisely why people question that it was the Congress-led government that brought in economic liberalization. And then you seem to have done a complete U-turn and gone the entitlement policy way, the populist policy way. Are we going to see, you know, a return to more free market economy if you were to get a mandate?
You tell me, why do you feel it's...
And which of course benefits the common man, which benefits the
but
poor.
why should it be either or policy? You have in the US...
Will you privatize Air India, for instance?
Let me give you another example.
Sure.
In the United States, for example, you have a very large economy. They are obviously very open, but they have a very strong affirmative agenda program, where they help the underprivileged. They have food coupons. They have, you know, people from Hispanic origin and the African American communities. Why should India not have? The BJP made fun of the Narega when they first took charge,
and then the highest ever allocation happened.
And now they realize that India exists in different sections. So there are a huge section of our people in this country which need the helping hand of the government. We must do it without leakages, must be targeted. They made fun of the DBT, the direct benefit transfer. Now they're following that. They made fun of the Aadhaar. Now they're following that. They opposed the US agreement, 123 agreement with the India and the US. They opposed it, nuclear deal. Now they're supporting it. So you see, BJP speaks a different tone when they're in opposition. And we, unlike the BJP, stand by what our convictions are, whether we're in opposition or government. So as and when, and quite hopefully very soon, when the Congress is back in power, we will certainly adapt a very positive approach. We will have to reform the economy. We'll still have to take care of the 400 million people who need our help and support. But it can't be either or policy. We have to look at all sections of society and move in a cohesive agenda.
Will that include privatization of an entity like Air India?
It's been on the card for a long time. I think there's a time for it and there's a value for it. The way that the BJP government has handled it was destined for failure from the day one.
You are somebody who is extremely involved with the agrarian crisis of the country. You travel far and wide, you speak to a lot of farmers. What is the solution to reform the agriculture sector in India with the kind of holdings that Indian farms have? I mean, obviously doubling of farm income is one narrative and that's the other end. But how are you going to ensure that prosperity returns to India's farms? It can't return in the present form where, you know, the majority of your farmers are owning less than 1 hectare of land. How is that going to happen?
This is a long-standing problem, but the governments should actually try and get rid of the problem, not accentuate it. What's happened now is that the export policies, the MSP declaration policy, the bonus that the states give has all been jumbled up. I think the governments, whatever government it is, must act in the first year of its formation as opposed to waiting for the 4th year, because then it becomes a very knee-jerk reaction. The whole ecosystem of the Indian agrarian situation is pretty bad in the last 3 or 4 years, because the focused attention that you need to give not just on the MSP and the financial aspect of it, but the back end of it, you know, the fertilizers, the seeds, electricity, the whole marketing and the whole link to the food chains has broken down. It requires a huge overhaul. It will take a Herculean effort for any government to come and get the farming community out of this, but they do form the backbone of most of our North Indian, South Indian states. Agriculture has not been given the kind of priority the government should have given, and that's the reason why we're now going from bad to worse.
You know, this government came to power on this whole development plank that we will create 2 crore jobs, like you said. None of that has happened. But I want to ask you, as somebody who's been in policy making again, is it so easy an argument to make? Can Congress say that we will provide jobs to everybody unemployed today? Because look at how job creation is happening. For every 10 jobs, there is automation, there is artificial intelligence, there is machine learning. Jobs are evaporating.
It depends on how you look at it. You know, when Rajiv Gandhi was Prime Minister, he introduced computerization. People thought 100 people's work one computer will do. It'll lead to redundancies. But today, the IT sector is providing perhaps the most fastest growth in job creation. So whether it's AI or automation, we've got to be able to create a more niche space for our young people. You know, their skill building, their training. The Skill India program, we have to link academic institutions to the industry. And jobs will happen. Government can't give everybody jobs, but the government can certainly create the environment where job creation takes place. Investments have to happen. Labor intensive units have to be given the helping hand. And I think my experience, I've seen maximum jobs are created by the MSMEs, the medium and small scale industries, the cottage industries.
And that's where the focus should be.
Whether it's Japan, Germany, in the US, it's not the blue chip companies, it's the small and medium enterprises that really create the bulk of the jobs. In India, unfortunately, we have not been able to pay that attention to our homegrown cottage industries. We talk about it, but actually we are not able to empower them to employ from 10 to 30 people. If we just do that, the incremental employment capacities of the small industry, if we increase that, we will have a sea change in terms of number of jobs we create every year.
And a lot of people believe that their backbone has been broken first due to demonetization, now to the GST. But, you know, let's talk pure politics, because that's who you are, a pure politician. I said something in passing that, you know, this is a new Congress of sorts with Rahul Gandhi in charge. What is the change? And I think some of his harshest critics will say that there is this all new Rahul Gandhi, at least on social media, on Twitter. But can a few smart tweets resurrect the man?
Not at all. It's not about I think what Mr. Gandhi has been doing, don't forget, we only got 44, 45 MPs in the 2014 polls. Despite having those numbers, 8 times the government of India tried to amend the Land Acquisition Act, and they failed each time. We have been a very robust, vocal, and an opposition that has made the government accountable. Just because you have a majority does not mean you have a blank check to do whatever you want. To be able to check a very powerful government, that job has been done by Mr. Rahul Gandhi. And, you know, frankly speaking, of all the opposition leaders, it is he alone who has taken on the central leadership and the Prime Minister and asked them those tough questions where other people were perhaps scared, because the government of India is using all the agencies at its disposal to quench the voice of the opposition. So Mr. Gandhi is leading from the front. His questioning of the government, his attacking the wrong policies of the government gives strength to all opposition forces. So therefore, I think every party changes and every party should change. Mr. Gandhi as president is doing what he's supposed to do as the principal opposition party in India, and people have a lot of expectations out of the Congress and of Mr. Rahul Gandhi, and I'm sure we live up to it.
How different is politics today in this age of social media, this advent of trolls, you know, where a Sushma Swaraj is not being spared? How do you, how different is it to be a politician today when everything is instantaneous, you know, from an Instagram to a Twitter to a Facebook, everything is being tracked, for every word that you say, you're being judged, attacked?
Well, it's changed. Well, when I first joined politics, mobile phones were a rarity.
Absolutely.
And today, you're right, social media
everybody has an
brought
opinion,
things
and
to
that
the
opinion
fore.
may not be responsible.
Yes, but I think it's important, it plays a role, but frankly speaking, I don't think it's so decisive that it'll change the contours of the landscape of Indian politics. It has effects, it has impacts, it's sensational, it makes things very instant, but then also memories are getting short and short. Social media is important, but like I said, what's happening to the foreign minister is pretty sad, really.
True.
And I would have expected more people in the BJP leadership to come forward and condemn those kind of negative trolls that she's facing.
At least her cabinet colleagues, for instance.
Everybody should. I think we must rise above, this party, that party. What is wrong is wrong. What's unacceptable is unacceptable. You can't threaten people, you can't abuse people on social media. That's misusing the platform. But real issues matter. No matter how much you Facebook and tweet, whatever, unless you spend time with the people, unless you are with them, unless you share a bond of, personalized bond, and you are there to share their good times and bad times, people don't feel that attachment. And India politics is different. It's not about just electronic communications. It's about creating that love and affection and bond that can only happen when you're there with those people.
So let's talk about Rajasthan. An extremely crucial election. Many people believe it will be a cue along with Madhya Pradesh for 2019, will set the narrative and all of that. As the party chief there, does that add to pressure?
I don't feel the pressure, but I'm certainly confident that all the hard work that we have put in for the last 4.5 years has paid us dividends. We did fairly badly in the 2013 Vidhan Sabha elections. We only got 21 seats out of 200. But since then, our vote share has increased, and me, along with all the senior leaders in the Congress party in Rajasthan, have really put in our efforts, and that's beginning to show. I'm fairly confident, and I don't want to sound immodest, but the results, the feedback, the reactions, the by-election results that we've seen for the last 3 or 4 years indicate that people are now willing and decisively so to give their blessings to the Congress party in the next elections.
Are we speaking to a potentially future chief ministerial candidate in Rajasthan? Because many people thought that there were these young Turks that Mr. Gandhi is going to bet on, and he proved everybody wrong by betting on Mr. Kamal Nath in Madhya Pradesh.
I think the Congress party is not a party of only experienced or only young people. And in fact, I think there is a whole generation of politicians who are younger than me.
Sure.
And it is my job and my responsibility to make sure that I do hand-holding for those 20, 25, 30-year-olds who can learn from my successes and failures, who I can give them the guidance, and that's how it should be. And it's a transition that is inevitable. It has to happen. In terms of who gets what, you see, I became a member of parliament when I was 26 years of age.
True.
I became a minister when I was 31. I became state party president at 35. So the party has given me already a lot. Now it's time for me to give back to the party. And how that pans out is what I can contribute. My and all leaders in Rajasthan, the singular focus is how to win the Vidhan Sabha elections. Who gets what position is quite frankly not important to any of us.
Talking about one such issue in Rajasthan, the BJP government today announces that there will be this 1% reservation and the circular will be issued soon. I'm presuming you're on board with that, but is that enough? And a lot of people will turn around and ask, when will this competitive reservation in India end?
When political parties start being honest. And I think the BJP has been certainly very, very dishonest. They promise reservations, they don't give it, there's agitation, there's police firing, people are dying, and then they go to court, they have a weak argument to support their own laws, it leads to chaos, leads to acrimony. It does divert the attention from the real issues, which are, electricity, food, water, education, industry. It gives fodder to people in power to keep them attached to power. And this particular circular is now being issued because the Honorable Prime Minister is going to Jaipur on the 7th. So, they want to make sure that everything is peaceful when he arrives and there is no opposition to his visit. But again, elections are around the corner. By doing this, people are too smart to not notice that it's being done because of elections. People will see through that. You actually want to give education, a better quality of life, job opportunities, security, safety to our women in the state. That's far more important than this piecemeal appeasement that the government of BJP Rajasthan is trying to do.
All that you spoke about, education, security, health and all of that is exactly what India needs. I mean, India that, lives on the edges needs all of this. But you've seen enough politics, and will you say and will you fear that 2019 is going to go back to Ram Rahim, it is going to go back to Hitler versus Aurangzeb, it is going to perhaps not be an election about the issues it should be an election for?
I think the BJP would like it to go in that direction that you mentioned, but people of India, the young voters, all of us responsible people in the opposition will make it about the issues. I don't think it's benefiting India if we go down that road that you talked about, Hindu, Muslim, Mandir, Masjid.
True.
That is not what 21st century India needs. What we need today is a accountable government, is a development oriented agenda, is delivered on the ground. It's the freedom of young people to do what they want, not to be told what to eat, what to wear, who to pray, how to behave. That we have to break those shackles, and those are much more important issues than the ones that you enunciated. So this election will not be allowed to be taken in the direction in which the BJP wants it to go.
There's a reason why they say you are a refreshing voice in Indian politics. Thanks very much for speaking to us.
Thank you.